So welcome to the Queensland AI Hub Meet the Board and new CEO, which is exciting. So firstly, I would like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also acknowledge that we have a number of parties joining us by the Zoom or the phone today and from other regions of Queensland and Australia, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of those regions and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So as I mentioned, it's a great time for the AI Hub. We've got some fresh announcements around our CEO and there's a lot of activity happening. But to kick off tonight, I want to share with you an intro video that's going to be launched tonight and be available on our website. So I'll just kick that off and enjoy the video. Give me one moment.
When I started computer science at university, the PC had only really just come out. I remember one day one of my friends saying to me, "Oh, you should really check out this new thing. It's called the World Wide Web." Through those waves of technology from PC to internet to mobile computing, AI is the next thing, right?
The more I learned about AI, the more I realised that it was going to be a level of change that we saw when antibiotics were introduced. That's what I want to unlock, and that's what the AI Hub is going to do.
We believe that AI is going to be transformative, and for Queensland to remain globally competitive, we need to make that transition with that technology.
Up to now, it's been in little pockets. With an AI Hub, you bring everyone together. You get that collective build-up and that collective knowledge, which means that we can then really start to unlock that potential.
Coming from a manual handling shed into an automated shed, consistency is just spot on. There's no chance that this computer will get tired and just stop grading correctly. It will just grade 24/7.
What are these new wave of companies we're going to see now? It's because this technology shift is going to be completely transformative.
Advancement in our tech means a more reliable early warning system for bushfires. There's the difference between knowing how many fire units to send out within 10, 15 minutes as opposed to knowing that answer within an hour.
There's a lot of innovation and there's a lot of people pushing the envelope. There's a lot of highly intelligent people always trying to do better, always trying to do more.
We have cameras, we have satellites, we've got a machine learning algorithm taking images and detecting objects. And the object that we're looking to detect is smoke.
There's a lot that other industries can learn from health. There's a lot that health can learn from other industries. And having those synergies together in a single AI hub make enormous sense.
It's to a point now where we need this to be able to move forward. You put the right people in place to monitor these things and you'll see nothing but benefits.
That's the world in which we are going to be working, and it's important that we help people get to that point. Yeah, that's where socially and economically we'll do the best.
So I hope, sorry about the chat box popping up there, but that's our intro video that you'll be able to find on our website, and obviously there'll be links out of the webinar today. So I'm now going to hand over to our illustrious board, and firstly to the chairman of the board and probably the man who really was one of the instigators of all this happening and many other things over the last 20 odd years in business in Queensland. So I'll hand over to you, Kelvin, to do the intro and explain the AI Hub and where you've come from, and I'll mute myself now.
Thanks, Rowan. Thanks, everybody. It's great to have you all here tonight so we can sort of give you a bit more of an update on where we're heading with the AI Hub and share with you our vision and engage you in that vision. And I think, you know, really working together as a collective industry is very important. Look, I'm a very proud Queenslander, born in Maryborough, you know, lots of growing up in Brisbane, but then out in country Queensland, studied at University of Queensland, did a PhD in safety critical systems there, Then started work in the military, or the DSTO, Defence Science and Technology Organisation. But, you know, after sort of leaving University of Queensland after a stint as well, I then started a business in Queensland. 23 years later, still going strong as a national IT consulting company, KJR, which I'm incredibly proud of the work we've done there. But the last 5 years or so, I got involved with several startups in the AI space, really at that sort of internet wave of AI. And it became clear to me that AI really was this next wave of technology, as I mentioned in the video, that after 30 years in the IT sector, we've seen those waves of technology occurring. And for me, you know, having had some successes in business, it really was thinking about what's that next generation of technology businesses we can grow here in Queensland, and how do we help grow that? So I've been very active the last 3 or 4 years with other colleagues like Dr. Brent Richards from Gold Coast University Hospital. I've got a real passion for what AI plays in medicine. And really the key of that is, how do we drive these other industries in Queensland? How do we engage AI as the future productivity engine for our businesses, and to make our Queensland businesses globally competitive? And how do we bring Queenslanders along that journey, both helping to grow Queensland companies, but also how do we help engage people in that skills development as our industries transition? Because I believe AI is going to have a big impact, but we want that impact to be for good for all Queenslanders. So I'm really driven around trying to achieve those goals, to make sure that Queensland's at the forefront of AI globally, but also that we engage AI in a positive way for all Queenslanders. So that's my whole mantra here. I'm a real collaborator. I'm here to help connect people, and I'm committed to do that. So I'm looking forward to your questions, but I might hand over to our next director, Nick, to give a bit of background. Nick.
Fabulous. Thanks, Kelvin. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Nick Thurkelson. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Max Kelson. My background is also University of Queensland. I'm sure that's going to be a trend here. But I actually studied economics and law originally, and came to ML through, you know, a funny couple of ways, but ended up founding a company in it 5.5 years ago. And today we're coming on to 40 strong. We've got clients around the world, USA, Singapore, Japan, and of course in Australia, that we develop commercial AI products for, and run those products in production. So really sort of proud of what we've managed to build here in Queensland, you know, in terms of having global impact in this space. But conscious that when when you're pitching for work in London or in New York, and you say, you know, people ask you, oh, where are you from? And you say Brisbane, and they say, oh, really? I would have thought Melbourne or Sydney at least. You know, what the world doesn't know is the fantastic community that we've built here. I spent the last 12 months helping organise the Queensland AI Meetup after, you know, what Natalie Wren's built here. And I've been close to many of the startups that have come along the way, you know, the likes of Popgun and Notive and others who are, you know, really doing exceptional work right here in Queensland. And I guess, you know, I've got the selfish interest in the Queensland AI Hub, and that's to make sure that we're attracting you know, everyone, anyone that wants to partake to a career in ML and AI, and that doesn't have to be hands on keyboards, you know, building algorithms. We employ people right across, you know, business analysis, designers, product managers. You know, there's a whole suite of clinical architects. There's a whole suite of value chain jobs that need to understand what ML and AI is capable of, and how to fit it into existing businesses and existing products. But we're keen to attract more people to the sector and help train new talent, so that Queensland does have the best talent here and is able to feed businesses like ours and those startups that I mentioned before, and all the other businesses that are going to need ML and AI to compete in the new economy. And I guess it's the less selfish one, which is, I want to make sure that we're putting Queensland on the map. I want people to think about Queensland the way that they think about Quebec, or the way that they think about Israel or Silicon Valley. We know that we've got great tech here. We know that we've got great people, and we're doing great things. And it's important for us to tell the world those stories. So look, it's been a long time coming. There's been a lot of blood, sweat and tears to get this group to where it is. I'm incredibly excited at the CEO that we're appointing tonight, and couldn't be happier with the group of people that we have on our board. I'm just stoked to see where this goes and be a part of the journey. So that's me. Looking forward to questions, and I'll hand over to Sarah.
Awesome, thank you very much. I'm saying hello from the precinct, which is where the AI Hub will be very, very soon. In fact, we have the space. We're just going to do some work on it. So welcome. I can't wait for you all to get here face to face as soon as we possibly can. I'm here representing basically the government. So I'm on the board as a director, but I'm also heading up AI in the Queensland government. We're absolutely thrilled to be supporting the AI Hub and can't wait to see all the impact it's going to have. In terms of my background, way back when I did a PhD in particle physics, and most of that was actually coding. I was stuck in the basement of the university and coding for 3 years. I was allowed out after 3 years, and a lot of parallel processing, having fun with that. Later on, I ended up doing breast and brain cancer diagnosis using synchrotrons and lasers, and actually got into using ML and AI for that. So using AI to diagnose breast cancer about 15 years ago. Another job that I've had was actually to work in international development and to help countries overseas to build themselves new economies, to get themselves out of poverty. And I have to say that some of the countries around us are doing a phenomenal job on this front. Vietnam is an incredible example of what they're doing, setting up hubs of people who can use AI and ML to do all sorts of amazing things to build their economy. So it's pretty exciting to think of what we can be doing here in Australia with the amazing talent that we have in Queensland. For me, I get excited because AI has the potential to make our lives better. I mean, obviously we've all talked a little bit about the medical side of things, but there's so many ways that AI will make our lives better. I'm also pretty excited about how the fact it can help current businesses, current companies to be much more globally competitive, as well as building new businesses and new industries here for us to grow more jobs. As I say, jobs for now and jobs for tomorrow that we need to be building here in Queensland. I think also AI has this incredible opportunity to make us better humans. I remember going to a talk recently where they talked about how you can use AI as an augmentation for humanity instead of thinking AI can take over humanity. How will it help us to be better people too? So that's something I'm excited about. And of course, AI for everyone. I couldn't be a woman in leadership without talking about getting women into AI, women into these new economies. And I'm pretty excited about that too, how we can use the AI Hub to draw more women into this. Lastly, I'd love to say it's a great opportunity to work with some fabulous people. It's always wonderful to work with people who are really out there, pushing back the boundaries, pushing the barriers, building new things, new economies, new industries, new ways of doing things, new tech. And the board are great examples of that. Really, really excited about working with the board. And as Nick said, I'm really thrilled to be working with Sue. Sue's going to be an awesome CEO for us. And I'm really thrilled to be working with her. It's a real privilege. So now I'm going to hand over to Rick.
Oh, hi, everyone. So I'm Rick Anstey. I too join with everyone else. I'm really excited and pleased to be involved in the AI Hub. I guess the background is that I'm probably the token older generation that's here. Started in the UK in the 70s, pre-personal computer. It's always been an industry to me that has excited me. There's many times when you're sort of in a job and you think it's a job which is to earn money, but I've never really felt that about this industry. And we left the UK in 1976 and I came here and I worked in IT for 2 companies, which was TNT, a big transport group, which was quite progressive at its time. You know, data processing was done in Singapore, and we did all the processing here locally in Sydney. I was. Then I moved to Comalco, which is part of the the Rio group, and again, quite progressive in its time. That was the early 80s, and that was when the IBM PC was announced, and we were starting to promote the industry users to start using a computer. And I think that was the second epiphany for me in my career, was to start to see people in industry get some value out of a computer, instead of it being that big box in the corner that processed your payrolls and your accounts. You could actually see industrial engineers and so forth being able to get the power of a PC on their desk. And that really kicked me on. And it's what's probably kept me going all my life and kept me continually interested. So in 1983, I set up a software company focused mainly on banking and finance, and we built systems. And I think a big part of my career is the fact that we were very data driven. We actually built data dictionaries for all the banks, and we actually built it for one, and then we sold it to the other banks. And it was an ability for banking users to be able to access data and then build their systems from it. And also, I guess the consultancy side of the business moved into business re-engineering, and it made me question what everyone does and what is the difference between efficiency and effectiveness. And I brought all of those things with me in my life, not necessarily in my career. I question everything I do now and to say, is this the best way to do something? And lucky enough that I left Sydney in 1994 and sold the company, and we came to Queensland, the family. And I was probably very helpful to some of the entrepreneurs I see now, because you're left with no business. You got some independence from a financial point of view, but what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And I looked around, and I started by looking at the Gold Coast Council, and they were local to me, and they were probably the largest organization here at that time. And I said, I made some suggestions that their IT strategy was a bit weak, if you like. And they suggested I do their IT strategy, which I did for that year, 1996, I think it was. And it was a way for me to get to understand how the economy here hangs. And there's no doubt about it that the council as such had access to many fields. And I helped them try to grow their economy with the introduction of external technology related businesses, but also formed a very strong relationship at that time with the Queensland government, the state government, with what was the smart state economy. And I was able to start talking about things like venture capital to many of the early stage companies and CEOs of tech companies, giving them some options of where they might go with their business. And from that, I guess I got to be, or to have a profile in what you'd call venture capital. And in 2000, I formed a new venture with a partner, the late Dr. Laurie Hammond. And for 20 years, we were federal government backed and invested ourselves, and also with some other companies and high net worth individuals. We went on to invest in about 30 companies and managed that portfolio over that period of time. And obviously over time, my involvement had peaks, and then I've gradually not done that so much now, but so now I am more of an independent director, advisor, and tend to help early stage companies raise capital. And I continue to get a constant stream, and I always say it's nearly daily now, of companies that want help with growing their business. all of that sort of feeds into the AI Hub, in that I believe that we have a great opportunity with the AI Hub to make the state more productive, both government and enterprise, and people, to upskill the people and to raise our profile in the world. It's not just about our own regional area, it's about being part of a bigger thing. And I think if you do what our mandate is, if we follow our mandates, you know, we have the ability to shine worldwide. So that's why I'm here. Hope that's enough. And now, the person who we're going to throw all this at has joined us. We've all been very supportive of bringing Sue on to run the AI Hub for us. So I'll hand over to Sue.
Thanks, Rick, and it's wonderful to be here and great to see so many people have joined us this evening. First, though, I do have to start with two confessions. One is that I'm not a Queenslander. I like to think of myself as an adopted Queenslander, and I have produced two Queenslanders. And also, I still feel relatively new in the AI space. So I actually grew up in Newcastle in New South Wales, down south, and was fortunate to be growing up in, I guess, a fairly privileged household where we were early adopters of technology. I remember that we were the first house in the street to have a personal computer in our house. Our neighbours came to visit to have a look at it. It was such a, you know, a novelty at the time. And I have always had a fascination with technology, but I really went down the path of scientists. So my background was originally in geology. And then it's only more recently that I got involved with robotics, and my sister has been quite an influence in that she's the managing director of Silicon Valley Robotics over in the US, and she's been telling me for quite a long time that, you know, robotics and AI were the way of the future and that I really should get on board. And I was fortunate to have the opportunity back in 2014 to be able to help set up the Queensland-based Australian Centre for Robotic Vision. And it was there that my eyes were really open to the range of possibilities that new technologies like robotics and computer vision could have on the world. And I think the other thing that struck me, though, was how what a challenge it was to try and pull the robotics and computer vision communities together. And I think in general, you know, what's true that we've seen in those communities is true of the broader AI community, that we still are, you know, in a fairly immature, fragmented state. And that's where I really think the Queensland AI Hub can make a significant difference in trying to make sure that we're building connections and trying to, I guess, build on our collective strength so that we can have a significant presence and really have a global impact. And as part of the Australian Centre for Robotic Vision, and in recognising that I really felt that we were not as well connected as we could be, I led the development of Australia's first robotics roadmap. And that was the first attempt to really map out what the capability in robotics was, because you would often go somewhere and people would say, oh yeah, Australia's really good at this. And it would be, well, by what measure? You know, how many companies are doing this? How many people are researching in this area? Do we really have a strength? You know, what does it look like in other parts of the world? And it was a really fantastic experience. We pulled together, you know, we had a lot of community consultation, and we pulled together a document that really articulated the impact that robotics and automation can have across almost every sector of the Australian economy. But importantly, and the best part of putting the roadmap together, was unearthing all of these amazing stories of in some cases, tiny companies across Australia that were doing incredible world-leading work, and yet, unfortunately, were completely invisible. And I think that, you know, robotics is a subset of AI, and I think we see a bit the same story in AI, and you could even argue more broadly for the whole technology sector in Australia. And when I was first starting with the Australian Centre of Robotic Vision, I was really lucky that I got a call from a very inspirational young person, Natalie Renz, and she wanted to talk to me about this idea that she had about creating this Queensland AI community. And, you know, she really had a vision for what that would look like. And I was really pleased that she sort of brought me along for the ride, and I became part of an advisory board that Natalie set up around the Queensland AI. And as we all know, the Queensland AI Meetup group has been incredibly successful. And really, I thought it was, Natalie really identified where some of the key challenges for us in AI are, in that there is quite a need for people to be able to learn and upskill in AI that wasn't currently being met by the educational system within Queensland. And so, you know, the way that the meetup groups have been able to draw like-minded people together to put on training initiatives so that people don't have to enroll in a full degree to be able to get competency in different areas of artificial intelligence and machine learning, I think has been truly inspirational. Now, obviously, you know, Natalie is, you know, now pursuing her dreams with her company Astria over in the US, and I'm sure she's going to be a great success. But you know, she had quite an impact on my thinking around this area, and then I was fortunate enough to be asked to join the board of the Queensland AI Hub, and I think that, you know, I guess what this has taught me is that, you know, robotics is a very important part of the AI community, and there can be a lot of learnings between the two, and that I firmly believe that Australia really has a very small window of opportunity to take advantage of technologies in the artificial intelligence space, and that we need for people to see artificial intelligence as a viable career. And we have a lot of work to do to make that happen. And you know, what I guess motivates me is that this sense that we have a small window of opportunity. Having said that, you know, the COVID-19 pandemic has, you know, had some awful consequences. But one of the key areas of technology that is going to make a difference in how the world adapts to all of the challenges that we will face from this pandemic is really around how well we are able to very quickly develop artificial intelligence technologies, and importantly, how we can encourage different industries to adopt them. I think, so it's never been a worse time in some respects, but it's never been a better time either. I think that there are huge opportunities for artificial intelligence, and the time to take advantage of them is now. So I'm extremely excited to have been given this opportunity to lead the Queensland AI Hub. And I really think that we can put Queensland on the map as an AI destination, and a lot of that is about unearthing the stories of the amazing AI technology that is already being developed to encourage people to consider starting their own businesses around artificial intelligence, and supporting all of those companies in Queensland to be able to take advantage of these technologies. And as you're probably aware, not only is Australia a nation of SMEs, but Queensland in particular is a state that really relies on small business. So I think 90% of Queenslanders are employed by companies that have 20 people or less. And it's how we support those companies to be able to adapt and take on these new technologies that will really impact on how Queensland economy is going to be shaped in the future. And I think Queensland AI Hub, it's a perfect time to start and for us to have a key role in making sure that Queensland is on the right track and takes a lead in adapting to all of those changes. So thank you very much to you know, my fellow board members for your trust in me in giving me the role as CEO, and I really look forward to what the future holds.
Excellent, thank you, Sue. And yes, it's easy to see there's even some comments there that's exciting appointment. So what we'd encourage people to do now, use the Q&A or the chat to ask some questions of the board. And there's already been a couple come through. So I guess just to broaden a little bit further on the conversation, I'll just throw to you first, Kelvin, and perhaps you can just expand a little bit. One of the questions is how we're going to help in the enablement of AI in Queensland. and more broadly into Australasia. So maybe you could just talk to that a little bit about where we see the AI Hub going in that area. You're on mute, mate.
Isn't that the statement of the 2020 year? You're on mute. Thanks, Rowan. Yeah, I think almost let's just go back a second and what is AI? First of all, I think we really need to articulate that piece. And really, AI in my head, we're not talking about the artificial general intelligence, about robots that will take over the world. What we're really seeing is particularly since 2012, when deep learning really started to surpass human capability or achieve, better than sort of traditional programming capability, we've now seen this group of general purpose technologies step up to perform cognitive functions at similar levels to what we can perform as humans. And this has really driven this whole new technology area since then, a massive investment cycle, and new applications that we're really able to apply our technology into the huge amount of data streams that we now get. And really AI now has put this in this path of implementation. This isn't so much about doing more research and development, and there will definitely be a lot of research and development going on, but really now it's saying industry's really poised to implement these AI technologies to really take business and our community and the way we process things electronically to a new level. And I think that's what we're recognizing here is that the formation of the AI Hub is really about how do we help Queensland go on this AI implementation pathway. And we'll definitely, we're the beneficiaries of a great research and development network. We've had that great support for research and development with great universities here in Queensland for some time. But a lot of this focus now is on how does business make use of this to be more productive? And I think in doing that, we need to do that because there's a lot of this is going to go on worldwide. So in my head, AI is about how do we work now to build these new industries, but also how do we use it to transform existing Queensland industries? And there was a question there about how do we engage the large corporates and government? And I think, again, the Queensland government over the last 5 years, since the formation of Advanced Queensland, has invested tremendously in the startup community, the entrepreneurial community. But what we want to see now is how we engage also our corporates and governments as we embark on this big industry transformation, how we actually engage that really innovative community at that next level. So I think I might hand over and whether some of the other directors have got some points to add, but I think it's really that point of seeing now AI's achieve that lift up in productivity. Now, how do we as Queenslanders through our existing organisations take advantage of that?
Excellent. Any of you other guys want to add to that?
If I can just build on that, I think absolutely in terms of the current industries and the current companies as well as the new companies, there's so much opportunity. We saw in the video some of the current industries such as ag tech, where AI can be really, really useful. So that's absolutely key. And I think also that making the point that it is across all of Queensland. So whilst the AI Hub is here in the precinct within Brisbane, the idea is that this will be helping companies across all of Queensland becoming globally competitive. And there was a question about, making sure that we can export this around the world and how we can be competitive around the world. Well, I think one of the exciting, that's not the right word to use, but one of the outcomes of COVID is that we will need to onshore our manufacturing. There will be an emphasis on that. We will need to be getting some sovereign ownership of our supply chains, and AI is going to be incredibly important as part of that. So, we will certainly be helping current companies to use AI to get much more efficient and effective so that we can have these effective supply chains here in Queensland.
It's Rick here. Can I just add a bit to Kelvin actually? In the definition of AI, I think it's really quite important as part of our mandate. It is such a widely used term. It's vogue, it's trendy, but does everyone really know what it covers? I think part of our mandate will be to put some parameters around that It is definitely a productivity enhancing solution. Choosing the words correctly. But I think that is part of our mandate. And the other part of it is obviously, I'm picking up on some of the questions, in that we can probably help with our networks to help companies become global. I think that's a big part of what we want to do. We want to foster any organisation in Queensland that has solutions which fall into this AI bucket. We want to know about them, we want to track them, and we want to help wherever we can. But that was my comment.
Excellent. All right. Well, we'll keep going because there's quite a lot of commentary now. I will just mention that if we don't get to your question, all the questions and comments are recorded, and we'll work to get those answers back to you if we don't address them all tonight. I think there's a question that I'd like to point towards Sue from Ken, and it's based on your commentary around you work with the Robotic Vision Centre. Is will there be an AI a roadmap in Queensland that points some direction towards industries that Queensland has some reputation for expertise in? So perhaps just a bit of a brief on what that might look like, and a little bit of expansion on the question around what we could be experts in.
Okay, so yeah, I'm not sure we need to do it in the form of a roadmap, but certainly I think the Queensland AI Hub will be profiling, just as if you visit the Queensland AI Hub website at the moment, you might see there's an interview with a company in Cairns about some of the interesting work that they're doing. And I think unearthing those stories of the capability that is currently existing in Queensland is an important role of the Queensland AI Hub. I think it would be good to formalise that in more of a structured way so that we can articulate exactly what Queensland's AI capability is and where our strengths are. I think it's fair to say that that is something we probably still need to collect some data on, but there are some key areas that are extremely important to the Queensland economy that we really need to focus on. Things like public safety, health and biotechnology, because the Queensland government has already invested a lot to make sure that the Queensland is has strength in that area. Our energy and utilities and our transport and logistics sectors are other areas where we see that AI being developed is and profiled is very important, and obviously how AI is applied to the natural resources sector, including the environment, mineral resource extraction, and also agriculture are going to be key. Thanks, Sue.
Like I said, there's a lot of questions coming through, so we'll try and roll through a few. Nick, I'd just like, there's been a question and that's mentioned that we have spoken about the Queensland AI Meetup. Can you just give a little bit more background about the AI Meetup and obviously the events that the AI Meetup, Queensland AI Meetup has are all listed and promoted through the Queensland AI Hub, but perhaps you can just give a little bit more of an explanation as to what the group does and what their purpose is.
Yeah, sure thing, Rowan. So the Queensland AI Meetup is, as mentioned, was set up by Natalie Renz and actually Yuxi as well, who now has Lyro Robotics out at the ARM Hub. And so it's a group of around 3,500 people who come together around one main meetup once a month, and that meetup will be a talk. Usually it's quite focused on practitioners in ML/AI or people implementing ML/AI, sharing their stories and their lessons learned about that process. We try and get guest speakers from a range of areas and a range of technical levels. I try to introduce the Chile measure in my tenure, where obviously one Chile was not very technical, through to 4. We did have Jacob, who was at QT and took a job at DeepMind. He definitely blew the Chile scale significantly in what was my favourite talk of the year. He just implemented RL algorithms from scratch. Some people didn't like it, and I appreciate that. But we try and cover all. We did for a while have a very technical group, which also met once a month, the fundamentals group. we would love to kick that back off again this year. Obviously, COVID's been tough, and some of the organisers of that group have left the state and the country to go and pursue other things. So if anyone is keen on helping us organise more theory-focused meetups for people that are right at the pointy end of things, we're very keen to kick those off again. So yeah, so if you are, particularly if you're looking at implementing AI or becoming a practitioner in the industry, or currently researching or currently working in, it's a really good community to come together and share stories about that. And we've been really fortunate with the speakers that we've had over the last couple of years. And looking forward to who joins us this year. This year I'm stepping back because my plate's a little full, but we've got a really exciting group of people who are working with me to come in and help organise relevant talks, and they're obviously bringing new networks and new speakers to the group as well, which will be great.
Excellent, thanks, Nick. The next question. And I think we'll start with Sarah, but we might need to share this one around a little bit, because it's a question that gets, I guess, asked about any government program that comes out. And the question is, how does the AI Hub distinguish itself from many other programs or entities which host events but fail to achieve true ecosystem development and societal economic transformation?
Yeah, really interesting question. But I think certainly in my first little while with the AI Hub, it's very clear that that's not what this AI Hub and the people that are running this AI Hub are about. The fact that it is industry-led, industry-driven, so the people that are in the driving seat are people who've built businesses and who are growing their businesses even more, who've built several businesses and who've also helped others to do that too, shows you the caliber of the sorts of individuals that are involved in this. They're individuals that want to make things happen. They're individuals who want to see outcomes. So I feel very confident that the group of people that have been successful in this this bid to set up the AI Hub are really people who will make things happen. I think also that if you look at the people around Queensland, certainly the ones that I've met are all people who want to network to make things happen, not just to talk about it. So it's not just the leadership, but the people that are in the broader community want to actually build some outcomes, and that was obviously part of the bid process as well. What are some of the outcomes that you're going to be delivering?
Excellent, Kelvin. I might just get you to add to that, if you would, a little bit, to to talk to the fact that look, we have started up in the middle of a global pandemic, which has sort of hindered some of the programs and things that we want to try and get off the ground. But to just explain that we are deeper than just an events organisation, and maybe touch on some of the things that we're looking to do, as we move through this next phase of the pandemic.
Yeah, thanks, Rowan. And I see there's been a bunch of questions about AI in medicine, and so that's an area that I've been working on now for several years, and working closely with some colleagues there in Queensland Health and Dr. Brent Richards from Gold Coast Hospital. And we've been really looking at the ecosystem for AI enablement. So AI in healthcare is probably the most exciting area of AI application. It's the most heavily invested area by VCs for AI, as to invest in healthcare. But when you look at actually what AI is hitting the bedside already, it's still very limited. And it sort of tells us that there's a bunch of implementation mechanisms that we're still to get right about how we get the great research and development in the labs and actually deliver that clinically to the bedside. So we've been doing, and if you think about, so we picked medical and biotech as one of those 5 priority segments for Queensland where I think we can be global leaders. And if you run through why in that sector can we do that? Well, AI is driven by data. Okay, so we need lots of data. The Queensland government's invested $1.3 billion in digitising medical records over the last 5 years. And really it's set us up well to look at the secondary use of that data for these insights that AI can help deliver AI at the bedside. But then in taking that data and sharing that with researchers and then getting those AI models back into the health system and the bedside, there's a number of things that we've got to go through to get that right. We've got to get the data sharing agreements right, and how we ethically build AI and share our private health data to build these models, and then how we use the models in a trusted way The regulators have still got to get their head around what are the things we've got to get right to allow those trusted algorithms to be used at the bedside. But also we've got to create those networks of what are those new generation of businesses that's going to go from the R&D to the translation to the commercialization. And then, you know, behind all of that, there's a massive education program that we've been doing. So first of all, you've got to educate the decision makers. We've got to inform the lead clinical people, the doctors. You know, then we've got to train the doctors and nurses about what impact that's going to have and how they would leverage this, we call it augmented intelligence. It's not replacing doctors and nurses, but more making them do a more superhuman job. And then how do we make sure that people are protected through that? They're not endangered. We don't have biases. We bring along communities that are disadvantaged, like our Indigenous communities in that area. So that's just one sector. You can see a number of those sort of issues that we've got to get right. We've got to get the data right. We've got to get sort of policy and advisory. We've got to provide education, but also we've got to stimulate that demand, you know, really creating that demand for the community, seeing the benefits of adopting that. And probably that's the first step of education that really needs to be done. So again, I just use medical biotech as one example because that's an area that I've worked a lot in with AI. But again, you know, we could say the same in our other priority segments, if that's public safety, things like, you know, you can see in our logos behind, like in defence or community safety and disaster response, or how we use it in environment and agriculture and our mining resources. So, you know, there's these same core elements that keep coming up: data, education, skills, ethical use, data sharing, you know, a bunch of these sort of policies and advisories. I think that'll be a core element that we're really trying to create those connections and overcoming some of those barriers.
Rowan, could I build on that? So Kelvin, you talked about having to, or wanting to bring everybody along on the journey. And I know that Craig did put in a question about, you know, how do we explain this to people out in the community who are not AI experts? And, you know, you're talking about, Kelvin, you're talking about current industries and how we can help them see they can be more profitable, so they can be more productive. So that's something quite easy to sell to people. People get afraid, though, that means that they will lose jobs. So I think that's a conversation we need to work out, how we have that conversation with people to show, yes, actually companies become more profitable, so there's more money in the economy. It leaves you free to do the interesting jobs. So, you know, you get something else to do, the not so interesting jobs. You can do the interesting jobs. And that also it builds new jobs to export any of the AI solutions that are developed. So, you know, it's a wham, wham, wham. You make things more productive and more profitable. You get us to do good stuff, and you build new jobs that we can export globally. And I think the other thing we need to do is demystify it. So people think AI is this some amazing, oh wow, what is that? That's as you were saying, Kelvin, these intelligent robots that are even more intelligent than us. But actually, you know, just getting in the car and the car telling you where you're going to go to next, or predicting it's going to take you 20 minutes to get home. We're already using it now. So I think that demystifying is going to be a really important part of the AI Hub. And I also wanted to add that we're in such a fabulous space right now. I mean, Queensland has been investing for decades in the R&D infrastructure, in the innovation infrastructure. We now have, you know, hubs all across Queensland. So we've got manufacturing hubs, we've got defence hubs, we're just about to have an ag tech hub, an immersive technology hub, the AI hub. If we bring all of these together, the impact, you know, back to that question we were answering, the impact that we can have with all of that together, I think is quite phenomenal. And that's certainly something that I know we're all really interested in.
Thanks, Sarah. And I think just to build on that now, there's a question here which, Rick, I think given your introduction, I'm going to send towards you. But the question is, I see business process transformation to change the way we work, really leverage the technology as a very important contributor to success, as is managing organisational change and culture. So given the length of your experience and these different transitions that you've seen in organisations over your journey, the question is, will the AI Hub be working on this too?
Oh, thanks, Ryan. you did allude to the fact that I've probably got a more lengthy experience. I think absolutely, it's fundamental to disruption and change is the fact that you question what you do today. You know, should you ever do it at all, or should you do it in a more effective way? And it comes back to that definition of AI. You know, we will foster and support solutions which make us more effective. So it is part and parcel of the change and change management and re-engineering of economies almost. So I think it's important. I also feel strongly, adding to what Kelvin and Sarah said, is that we're not competitive with other groups. We started off talking about all the other events that go on, and we all know that we are inundated with events. We intend to be an umbrella, and we intend to be aware of everything that's going on and maximize what they're doing. So we don't want to be driven by doing the best of anything specific. If there are other people doing it well, we want to help them. So I hope that covers it.
Yeah, thanks, mate. And look, we've got about 7 or 8 minutes left. So perhaps what we can do is we might just go around the board, and you know, we'll finish with Sue as the boss now, and maybe just give your own little insight. That, you know, there's lots of questions about you know, what we're hoping to achieve or see come out of this for Queensland. You know, how do we measure our maturity? You know, all sorts of different things, and there's a lot of great questions which obviously we're not going to get all to tonight, but perhaps you can all just finish with a few comments about what it is that's going to make the Queensland AI Hub different, and why. Well, actually, there's one question that I want you to include in that, and that is, it was a great question too, because it's really important in the context. How can AI companies help the AI Hub in our startup phase, and what is it that we need from the community coming in to really make this success? You know, as a hub, we are the center, we're the conduit. So how can we obviously utilize that expertise and knowledge out there? So Kelvin, if I can start with you, and we'll go around, and Sue will give you the last word. You're on mute again, mate.
Yeah, I was onto that one. Thanks, Ron. Yeah, look, you know, I think in many respects, the AI Hub really is going to be a concierge across the network. You know, how we sort of connect the different pieces. So if I was a startup, an AI startup, you'd be really trying to reach out to the AI Hub to try to find those connections, say into, you know, into government, into the customer base, about who can you help me, you know, who can the Queensland AI Hub help me connect to, that's going to help me look at them as my first customer. And, you know, and often what we found with trying to make those connections in the medical space, new AI startups were going, well, the first thing I need is data. You know, I don't have 3 years to go and collect all this data. Are there customers I can work with, and so I can show how my technology can create those new customer insights with that data? But also there's many of those different aspects to that ecosystem that we need to connect people to. There's the research and development aspect through our universities and sort of subsidies and other programs. There's the stuff we were discussing about on policy and advisory to make sure that you head in the right direction, and how you navigate some of those pathways. And then there's the skills base. So if you're a successful company that's growing, like Nick's company, Max Kelson, who's growing rapidly off the back of AI, it's, as a community, how do we rapidly develop these skills as a cluster so there's those job opportunities for people to create? So if we can make startups be successful, they're going to be the biggest growth opportunity for skills in this space in the short term. So yeah, how do we help them accelerate that to create jobs for more Queenslanders? So I think, you know, I always think a lot of it's about how do we actually stimulate industry in Queensland to start investing. So off the back of that, our whole technology and innovation industry can actually support that to grow into global markets and really put, you know, Queensland on the front of the AI agenda and not sort of a victim of an overseas AI agenda that might cast down from others.
Excellent. Rick, we might just get you to make a comment on, you know, like around the governance and that sort of thing with organisations. How can we help companies with that sort of aspect of this?
Well, that's a left field one quick. I've obviously got a bit of background in the compliance area and governance from the ASX listed companies. My view has always been that compliance and governance, it doesn't matter what size your company is. It's important to all companies. It's your foundation, it's your policies, it's your ethics. It defines who you are, and you need to have that in place. And I think having the experience that we've got around the board, you know, we can help other companies implement those sort of risk management policies. You know, both from a corporate point of view and from a moral point of view. I hope that covers what you meant, but yeah.
Good on you. And so, Sarah, obviously you represent the government on the board. Where do you hope to see the AI Hub go from a government perspective?
Well, I think, as I mentioned earlier, obviously helping current industries to transform and become more productive and globally competitive using AI, and to build new companies. That's the jobs for now, jobs for today and jobs for tomorrow, but also to take a bit of a national approach. So we talk about, you know, national connectivity and international connectivity. So how do we use this fabulous hub to be that connector across Australia and globally? 60% of Australia's AI startups are here in Queensland. So that's great for us. That puts us in a leadership position. But how do we also connect across, like I say, across the country and internationally? And what can we lead in? So what are the areas that we will lead in? Ethics was an interesting one. I saw that come up in the questions along the side there. You know, there is a national piece of work which is linking into an international piece around ethics. I'm sure that we'll be involved in that in some way or another. I'd love to see the AI Hub working on hyperconnectivity and mass collaboration. So how do we get people easily connected to exactly what they want when they want it? And how do we all do this? It's not just the AI Hub, it's not just Queensland government, it's not just individuals, but how do we all get behind this and make this work? And as part of that, how do we all shout out the story? So, you know, how do we make sure people really know? And it's not just us, it's not just the AI Hub, it's all of us shouting out all the fabulous things that are happening here so that we really get known.
Excellent. And Nick, obviously a rapidly growing company, a company that's been employing people during a pandemic. How do you see this assisting Queensland in its economic growth and businesses like your own to really grow and expand, and the opportunities the hub can offer to other businesses like yours?
Yeah, I think, I think that everything that we've discussed today helps just build the ecosystem and the community and ultimately the industry in Queensland. And the point that Sarah was making earlier about jobs, that, you know, we shouldn't look at AI as a job destroyer, we should look at it as a job creator. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but the fact of the matter is, if you don't have one side of that equation, which Sarah mentioned, is that you're creating jobs in AI, then AI is going to be a job destroyer. Just the difference is that you won't see any of the upside. If Queensland doesn't do it, someone else will. We're not protected by any borders or any barriers for software technology changing the way that we work. And this train is well and truly on the tracks and en route. So I think that, you know, it's been said a few times, there's a critical window that you know, we as a board and Sue as a CEO, we're looking to make sure that Queensland and Queensland companies are positioned as best they can be and as supported as they can be to jump through that window and make sure that we do have the jobs of the future here in Queensland, for all the work that's gone in, you know, to get us to where we are. And I think it's got to be said that, you know, this is a really incredible initiative by the Queensland government. It was, you know, it's been a few years in the making. It is the only of its kind in Australia. And I think as Queenslanders, we should represent that you know, it's not Melbourne, it's not Sydney for once that are ahead. It's us here in Queensland, and I think that's a great testament to, you know, the enduring legacy of the Advanced Queensland program, and this just being one element of that. And I know I speak from our point of view that we've benefited from other programs in you know, other pieces of that program. It's great to see it continuing to grow. And we should, you know, we should all look at that and go, look, Queensland is a great place to innovate. It's a great place to build a business. And I'm just excited. You know, I think if we look at COVID-19, and as you mentioned, Rowan, that, you know, we've been growing aggressively in COVID, which is somewhat of an awkward position to be in given the circumstances that many find themselves in. But one thing I will say, one green shoot in all of the COVIDness is that the world is much smaller today than it was 4 months ago. And all of a sudden, contracting with companies around the world, there's no longer the question of how do you get here or why aren't you here in my backyard. We can operate in any market we want because the barriers don't exist anymore. And so it's an exciting time, it's an exciting project, it's a great team. It's going to mean a lot to us, but it's going to mean a lot to every business in Queensland, not just those that are in AI today.
Thanks, mate. That was great. And obviously, the last word to the lady of the moment. Let's just tell us where we're going, Sue. And obviously, we do have a start date, so maybe you could advise of that. So let's not try and get meetings before that date, but we'll certainly book the diary once that's done. So I'll hand it to you.
Thanks, Rowan. So yeah, I start on the 17th of August, but that's not very far away. And so for all those people I've been promising to meet with, it's probably from the 17th of August is when that might happen. But, you know, I think that as with all startups, you know, a lot of the initial part of the setup of the Queensland AI Hub will be on information discovery and talking to as many people as possible. And Rowan and I know a lot of the board members have already been going out and doing that. And just looking at what we can implement quickly to get some quick wins, but trying to keep in mind, and Michael Evans has put up some really pertinent questions there about what will success mean for the Queensland AI Hub. In 5 years' time, what should Queensland's AI scene look like, and how will the community have benefited, and importantly, what will be the key benefits realised by Queensland by their investment in this AI Hub? I think we have to be very clear about what that is going to look like, and obviously we should be ambitious as well, and then, you know, set a path on how we're going to get there.
Excellent. Thanks, Sue. Well, we have run over time a little bit, but we'd like to thank everybody for your attendance tonight and the great questions. And the questions will get circulated to the board to respond to any that we haven't got hold of. But thank you again. And as mentioned, the big key to this is it's a community, and it's a two-way communication. So we will be working really, really hard to deliver what Queensland needs to make this AI Hub successful, but we need that engagement as well. So we encourage you all to get on the website, register for the newsletters and attend events. Sonia has an industry questionnaire that we're asking people to fill out so that we can get a better understanding of what's happening in Queensland and the AI scene. So thank you again for attending. Keep up to date on the website with upcoming events, and obviously jump on our socials. And thank you to the board for your time tonight, and we'll look forward to seeing you all at our next event.